The 1960s weren't just about flower power and spy flicks. Hidden deep under the studio blockbusters were films so daring, strange, and brilliant that most audiences never even knew they existed. These are the movies critics couldn't neatly label, studios didn't know how to sell, and yet, decades later, they're impossible to forget. Which ones will leave you shaken, inspired, or maybe just baffled in the best way? Let's dig into 11 cult classics that prove the 60s had a wild side Hollywood never planned for. Petulia, 1968. From the very first frame, Petulia feels different. Director Richard Lester drops you into a San Francisco that's stylish, yet uneasy, glittering with possibility, but haunted by change. Julie Christie plays Petulia Danner, a young socialite who seems carefree on the outside but is quietly wrestling with the wreckage of her life. George C. Scott is Archie Bullen, a recently divorced doctor whose own sense of direction is slipping away. Their meeting should be the start of a love story. Instead, it's something more complex, messy, and painfully real. Lester doesn't tell the story in a straight line. Scenes flicker back and forth in time, using quick edits and overlapping images that feel like memories, fighting for space in your mind. One moment you're watching Petulia charm a crowd. The next, you're staring into a hospital room where the truth about her life starts to crack through the surface. San Francisco itself becomes a character. All glass towers, fog-drenched streets, and the hum of a city on the edge of cultural upheaval. The performances are a masterclass in understatement. Christie brings an unpredictable energy to Petulia, shifting between luminous charm and quiet despair without warning. Scott plays Archie like a man who's been drifting for years, but only just realized it. Their chemistry isn't about grand declarations. It's about half-finished sentences, glances across crowded rooms, and the kind of silences that speak louder than any monologue. What makes Petulia a cult classic is how boldly it refuses to give you easy answers. It's not here to reassure you that love fixes everything. Instead, it lingers in the uncomfortable truth that people can collide, change each other, and still walk away alone. On its release, audiences weren't sure what to make of its fractured storytelling and refusal to tie things up neatly. Today, it feels ahead of its time, a sharp, stylish, and heartbreaking snapshot of two people trying to find meaning in a world that's moving too fast for either of them. Point Blank, 1967. When Lee Marvin walks through the first scene of Point Blank, you instantly know this isn't a regular crime thriller. Director John Boorman takes what could have been a straightforward revenge plot and twists it into a hypnotic fever dream. Marvin plays Walker, a man betrayed by his partner and left for dead. Instead of coming back with guns blazing, he comes back with something more unsettling, a calm, relentless focus that makes him scarier than any mob hitman. From the start, Boorman warps the visual and emotional landscape. Harsh lighting slices across faces, sound drops out in key moments, and editing jumps forward in ways that make you wonder if you're seeing events as they happen or as Walker remembers them. Los Angeles isn't shot like a postcard city. It's cold, metallic, and empty, turning every encounter into a showdown in an alien world. The supporting cast is as sharp as Marvin's steel-eyed stare. Angie Dickinson's role as Chris is more than a standard love interest. She's an unpredictable ally, caught between self-preservation and loyalty. Every character seems to be moving in their own orbit, yet somehow pulled into Walker's gravitational force. One of the film's most brilliant moves is how it strips away the usual emotional payoff. You don't get a heroic rise and triumph arc. Instead, you get a meditation on obsession, money, and the way revenge can become its own reason for living. Walker doesn't rage. He doesn't grandstand. He simply moves forward, step by step, as if the entire world has already lost and just hasn't realized it yet. When it hit theaters, Point Blank baffled many viewers. It was too stylish for the action crowd, too brutal for the art house audience. But that's exactly what makes it unforgettable now. It's a movie that demands you pay attention, not just to the plot, but to the way it bends and distorts reality. Every frame feels intentional, every silence loaded. In the end, it's not just a revenge story. It's a study in how cinema can be both ruthlessly cool and deeply unsettling at the same time. Charlie, 1968. There's something quietly devastating about watching Charlie unfold. Cliff Robertson plays Charlie Gordon, a kind but intellectually disabled man working in a bakery, treated more like a joke than a person. When two scientists offer him an experimental operation to dramatically increase his intelligence, Charlie sees it as a chance to finally fit in, to finally be more than what the world assumes he is. What follows is a transformation that's both inspiring and deeply unsettling. Director Ralph Nelson doesn't just show Charlie's newfound brilliance, he immerses you in it. The visuals shift with Charlie's mind, the pacing quickens, camera movements grow sharper, and vibrant colors replace the muted tones of his earlier life. For a while, it feels like a triumph. Charlie learns languages, masters complex theories, and charms the people who once dismissed him. But there's a shadow hanging over it all. As Charlie becomes smarter, he also becomes painfully aware of human hypocrisy, loneliness, and the fragility of connection. His relationship with Alice, played by Claire Bloom, is tender yet tense, a reminder that love is never as simple as shared affection. And when the operation's effects begin to fade, the film's tone shifts again, from exhilarating growth to the quiet dread of knowing what's coming. Robertson's performance is extraordinary. He captures every phase of Charlie's journey with precision, the openness of his early innocence, the sharp confidence of his peak, and the heartbreaking grace of his decline. It's no surprise he won an Oscar for it, though the film itself was largely left behind in the decades that followed. Charlie isn't just a science fiction drama, it's a meditation on what it means to be human. It forces you to think about intelligence not as a ladder to climb, but as a gift that can also be a burden. And when the credits roll, you're left with a question that's hard to shake. If you could change yourself entirely, would you, knowing you could lose it all? The Swimmer, 1968. In The Swimmer, Burt Lancaster spends nearly the entire movie in swimming trunks. But this isn't a sunny poolside romp. Based on a John Cheever short story, the film follows Ned Merrill, a charming suburban man who decides, on a whim, to swim home by traveling through the backyard pools of his wealthy Connecticut neighbors. It starts as an eccentric idea. It ends as something much darker. Director Frank Perry slowly peels away the veneer of Ned's perfect life. At first, the pools sparkle, and the neighbors greet him warmly. But as his journey continues, each stop reveals cracks in his story and in his mind. Conversations turn tense, old grudges surface, and smiles fade into awkward silences. The camera captures it all with a shifting tone, bright, inviting sunlight that gradually gives way to overcast skies and colder water. Lancaster delivers one of his most fascinating performances, balancing Ned's charisma with a creeping desperation. He moves like a man trying to outrun a truth he refuses to face, clinging to an image of himself that everyone else has already stopped believing in. The supporting cast, a rotating gallery of friends, acquaintances, and strangers, serve as mirrors, each reflecting a different piece of Ned's unraveling reality. The film's structure is deceptively simple, a man going from pool to pool, but the symbolism runs deep. Each swim is a step further into isolation, each interaction a reminder that the world has moved on without him. By the time Ned reaches his final destination, the journey feels less like a physical trek and more like a descent into the ruins of a life that was never as solid as it looked. The Swimmer baffled audiences in 1968. It wasn't a comedy, wasn't quite a drama, and didn't play by any conventional rules. Today, it's revered as a haunting, surreal portrait of denial and decline. It lingers with you like a dream you can't quite explain, vivid, unsettling, and impossible to forget. The Naked Kiss, 1964. When a movie opens with a woman attacking a man while a jazz score blares, you know you're not in for a standard drama. Samuel Fuller's The Naked Kiss starts at full tilt and never really slows down. Constance Towers plays Kelly, a woman with a shadowy past who arrives in a small town determined to start fresh. She takes a job at a children's hospital and seems ready to leave her old life behind. But in Fuller's world, the wholesome surface is always just a cover. Kelly soon discovers that beneath the polite smiles and quiet streets, the town hides secrets darker than anything she's seen before. Fuller shoots it with sharp contrasts, bright daylight scenes that feel almost too clean, and nighttime sequences that pulse with unease. Every interaction hints at an undercurrent of tension, as if everyone knows something they're not saying. Towers is magnetic as Kelly. She's tough, quick-witted, and refuses to play the victim. Yet there's a vulnerability in the way she reacts when the truth begins to show itself. Fuller surrounds her with a supporting cast that's both colorful and unnervingly believable, each adding a layer to the town's strange ecosystem. What makes The Naked Kiss unforgettable is how it blends pulp energy with genuine emotion. Fuller tackles heavy themes without ever losing the story's momentum, using bold dialogue and striking visuals to keep you hooked. On release, it was too blunt for mainstream audiences, who weren't ready for a film that exposed the rot beneath small-town respectability. Today, it stands as one of Fuller's most daring works, a reminder that the past has a way of catching up, no matter how far you try to run. And in Kelly, it gave us a protagonist who's as tough as they come, but still human enough to break your heart. The Loved One, 1965. There's satire. And then there's The Loved One, a film that takes the Hollywood funeral industry, cranks the absurdity to maximum, and serves it with a pitch-black grin. Directed by Tony Richardson and based on Evelyn Waugh's novel, it's a gleefully biting look at the American obsession with image, even in death. The story centers on Dennis Barlow, a young Englishman in Los Angeles who stumbles into the bizarre world of Whispering Glades, a luxury cemetery that treats burial like a blockbuster production. From lavish mausoleums to theatrical memorial services, nothing is too over the top. Around every corner, there's a character who seems to have wandered out of a surreal sketch show. Embalming artists who treat their work like high fashion, businessmen who talk about coffins the way others discuss sports cars, and PR staff who could sell grief like a new movie release. Rod Steiger, Jonathan Winters, and Anjanette Comer lead an ensemble that throws themselves into the absurdity without ever breaking the deadpan delivery that makes it work. The comedy is sharp but never broad, aiming its jokes squarely at the commercialization of death and the way Hollywood can turn anything into a spectacle. Visually, the film mixes candy-colored brightness with moments of eerie stillness, reinforcing the contrast between what's being sold and what's really happening. The humor lands because it's rooted in truth, the showbiz polish, the euphemisms, the relentless marketing speak. The Loved One didn't find mass audiences in 1965. It was too strange, too cynical, and far too ahead of its time. Today, it plays like a lost cousin of Dr. Strangelove, a fearless, brilliantly mean-spirited comedy that reminds you nothing, not even death, is safe from the sales pitch. Medium Cool, 1969. Haskell Wexler's Medium Cool doesn't just blur the line between documentary and drama, it erases it entirely. Set in Chicago during the summer of 1968, the film follows John Casellas, a television news cameraman played by Robert Forster, who drifts between covering the news and becoming part of it. Wexler, a legendary cinematographer, stages scripted scenes in the middle of real political unrest, most famously during the Democratic National Convention protests. As tear gas fills the air and police clash with demonstrators, Forster and co-star Verna Bloom move through the chaos, their fictional storyline unfolding in the middle of actual historical events. It's not reenactment, it's the real thing. The result is electric. You feel the tension not just from the plot, but from knowing these actors are in genuine danger. Wexler shoots with a mix of cinema verite, intimacy, and deliberate framing, capturing both the urgency of the streets and the disconnection of a media system that records without necessarily understanding. The title, Medium Cool, is a play on Marshall McLuhan's theory of hot and cool media, and the film challenges viewers to think about what journalism really means. Is the cameraman an observer, a participant, or something in between? When it premiered, the film was controversial, partly because of its politics and partly because it refused to fit a single genre. Over time, it's become a cornerstone for filmmakers who want to push the boundaries between fact and fiction. Watching it now is like opening a time capsule. Only the emotions inside are still raw, still relevant, and still ready to spark debate. Pretty Poison, 1968. Pretty Poison begins like a quirky romance and ends like a slow-motion disaster you can't look away from. Anthony Perkins plays Dennis Pitt, a young man recently released from prison who spins wild stories about working for the CIA. In a small Massachusetts town, he meets Sue Ann Stepanek, played by Tuesday Weld, the local golden girl with an angelic smile. From the start, their chemistry is oddly off-kilter. Dennis is awkward but eager. Sue Ann is charming but unreadable. As she's drawn into his fantasies, the film starts tilting in unexpected directions. What seems like harmless roleplay gradually reveals itself as something far more dangerous. And it's not Dennis who's holding all the cards. Director Noel Black plays this shift with precision, moving from lighthearted moments to an undercurrent of dread without obvious warning. Perkins leans into his post-psycho knack for playing vulnerable men teetering on the edge, while Weld delivers a performance that's both radiant and quietly chilling. The real genius of Pretty Poison is how it toys with the audience's assumptions. At first, you think you know who the manipulator is, only to realize you've been watching the wrong person the whole time. When the final act hits, it's both inevitable and shocking, the kind of ending that sticks, because it rewires the way you see every scene that came before. Ignored on release, the film later found life on television and in midnight screenings, where its mix of dark humor and creeping menace turned it into a true cult gem. It's proof that in small towns, appearances can be not just deceiving, but downright dangerous. Reflections in a Golden Eye, 1967. In Reflections in a Golden Eye, John Huston turns a quiet southern military base into a pressure cooker. Marlon Brando stars as Major Weldon Penderton, a rigid officer whose marriage to Leonora, played by Elizabeth Taylor, is crumbling. Around them swirl a network of tangled relationships, unspoken tensions, and private obsessions. The film's palette is unlike anything else from the era. Huston famously tinted the entire movie in golden hues, giving it a hazy, dreamlike quality that makes even mundane scenes feel charged with meaning. The atmosphere is thick. You can almost feel the humid air clinging to the characters as they circle each other in a dance of curiosity, suspicion, and longing. Brando plays Penderton with a mix of precision and repression, a man who follows every rule but can't quite control the storm building inside. Taylor, meanwhile, brings her trademark magnetism to Leonora, a woman too fiery to play the dutiful wife quietly. The supporting cast, including Brian Keith and Julie Harris, deepens the film's web of conflicted loyalties. Reflections in a Golden Eye was a tough sell in 1967. Its themes were too ambiguous, its tone too unsettling, and its visual style too strange for mainstream audiences. But that's exactly why it endures as a cult classic. It's a story about what simmers under the surface, about the things people can't admit even to themselves. It's the kind of film that doesn't explode, it seeps in, scene by scene, until you're tangled in its mood and unsure exactly when it took hold. Ride the Whirlwind, 1966. Long before revisionist westerns became fashionable, Monte Hellman made Ride the Whirlwind, a spare, stripped-down take on the genre starring a young Jack Nicholson. The plot is as minimal as the dusty landscapes it's set in. Three cowboys, mistaken for outlaws, find themselves hunted by a posse with no interest in hearing the truth. Instead of grand showdowns and sweeping heroics, Hellman gives us long stretches of quiet, tense conversation, sudden bursts of violence, and the gnawing sense that justice in the frontier is more about survival than fairness. Nicholson, who also co-wrote the script, plays Wes, a man caught between loyalty to his companions and the growing realization that they're not getting out alive. The dialogue is lean but loaded, every exchange tinged with the possibility that it might be the last words these men speak. Hellman's direction is patient and precise. He lets the silence of the desert speak as loudly as the gunfire, using empty space and natural light to strip the story down to its barest bones. The effect is almost meditative until the bullets fly. Ride the Whirlwind wasn't built for the box office. It was too quiet, too unconventional, and too fatalistic for fans expecting the moral clarity of John Wayne's West. But in hindsight, it's a blueprint for the modern anti-Western, influencing filmmakers who wanted to challenge the myths without losing the genre's stark beauty. Castle Keep, 1969. Sidney Pollack's Castle Keep is unlike any other World War II movie you've seen. Set in a crumbling Belgian castle, it follows a small group of American soldiers, led by Burt Lancaster's Major Falconer, tasked with holding the position against an approaching German offensive. But this isn't just about tactics and firepower. The castle is filled with priceless works of art, and the film quickly becomes a strange, dreamlike meditation on the value of beauty in the middle of destruction. The soldiers argue, philosophize, and form uneasy alliances with the eccentric inhabitants, all while the war creeps closer. Pollock blends absurdist humor with moments of sudden, brutal violence. One moment, a soldier is musing about the meaning of life. The next, he's in a firefight that's as chaotic as it is deadly. The tone shifts keep you off balance, mirroring the unpredictability of war itself. Visually, the film is rich and textured, making the castle feel like both a sanctuary and a trap. The performances are equally layered, with Lancaster commanding the screen as a leader who understands the futility of his mission but fights anyway. Castle Keep divided critics on release. Some saw it as too strange, others as too profound for its own good. Today, it stands as a one-of-a-kind war film, a reminder that even in the middle of history's ugliest moments, humanity can still wrestle with questions of beauty, purpose, and survival. So there you have it, 11 films from the 60s that refused to play by the rules, got ignored for it, and are all the more fascinating because of it. Each one is a reminder that cinema's most daring work often hides just outside the spotlight. Which of these forgotten gems do you think deserves a comeback screening? Drop your pick in the comments, hit subscribe, and keep digging. The past still has surprises waiting.